And good evening to you, everybody. I'm Martha MacCallum, and tonight, this is the lead story. The release of an email that was written by Susan Rice on her last day of the Obama administration from her White House office. It sheds light on the White House's role in the perpetuation of the Russia probe, to the point of abandoning presidential transition practices and the customary expected sharing of information with the incoming administration. That's what's discussed here. So all of this concern about sharing information with General Flynn turned out to be based on zero hard evidence of malfeasance on the part of General Flynn. You may remember this a couple of days ago from our former oversight chair, Trey Gowdy, who we spoke with on this program. Watch this.
Get all the documents, get all the evidence, Martha. I mean, you referenced Susan Rice. There's a part of that email that no one's ever read because it's still classified. There are a lot of documents that need to be declassified.
So thanks to our next guest and the acting director of national intelligence, Rick Grinnell, this is the now released email that came out late today. Part of that email from Susan Rice wrote this. During the meeting, she writes, Director Comey affirmed that he is proceeding, again, quote, by the book as it relates to law enforcement. From a national security perspective, Comey said that he does have some concerns that incoming NSA Flynn is speaking frequently with Russian Ambassador Kislyak. Comey said that could be an issue as it relates to sharing sensitive information. President Obama asked if Comey was saying that the NSC should not pass sensitive information that's related to Russia on to Flynn. Comey replied, potentially. He added that he has no indication thus far that Flynn has passed classified information to Kislyak, but he noted that the, quote, level of communication is unusual. All of that is documented by Susan Rice in an email that she wrote to herself right around the time that President Trump was being inaugurated on January the 20th, 2017. So joining me now, Senator Ron Johnson, chair of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. Senator, good to see you this evening. What do you see in that email? What troubles you in that part that was just released today?
Well, hello, Martha. I have to admit that the first thought when I read that declassified email was, why in the world was that ever classified? My next thought really went to the point you were making here. We didn't witness what America has become so famous for, a peaceful, cooperative, well-wishing transition of power. Instead, we saw a corruption of that transition. A transition that's really designed to sabotage and really upend the new administration. It's shameful is what it is. So this needs to be dug into further. We need to do further investigation. You know, my own committee, working with others, is going to really focus on that whole corruption of the transition process.
Yeah, I mean, that is what stands out to me as well, because clearly in that conversation it says, well, there are some concerns. You know, they've been talking a lot, General Flynn and Ambassador Kislyak on the phone. Now, I don't know what the definition of a lot is here. I think it was about 6 phone calls that went back and forth. You know, I don't know how many times he talked to other people. I do know from discussions with KT McFarland, who was his deputy, that during that time period, they were making a lot of calls to a lot of foreign leaders, introductory calls, you know, sort of laying the groundwork for what was to come. So, but they also say in this email, Susan Rice, you know, we don't have anything that we are specifically worried about here. So it's sort of like a lot of sound and fury, but there's not a lot of substance underneath it, which may be why they say it means nothing. But we all know that led to the investigation and the sit down with General Flynn. And 3 years later, he's still waiting for the outcome.
Well, Martha, you would expect an incoming administration to be making a lot of phone calls, preparing for an enormous task. What you don't expect is a previous administration spying on them. You don't expect the previous administration sabotaging the incoming administration. You know, there's so many odd things about that email that it was written 15 days later. She said she just didn't have time. It sounds like somebody in the White House counsel office came to her and asked her to write that email. That's odd. So, again, there's an awful lot of questions we need to answer. But remember, Michael Flynn is an American patriot. He headed the Defense Intelligence Agency. He worked for President Obama. Now, President Obama did not like him because when he retired, he started criticizing the administration conducting foreign policy through willful ignorance. Apparently he supported somebody who lodged a sexual harassment complaint against Andy McCabe. So there's reasons people didn't like Michael Flynn, but I think it's far, far larger than that. And so we need to take a look at, who else was unmasked, who else potentially was the Obama administration spying on, what else did they do to corrupt that transition process?
Well, I know that that's a question that you want to continue to move forward on. But one more issue as it pertains to this, when you look at the phone call, we haven't looked at the phone calls. We don't know what's in the transcript. I mean, if there was something disturbing in it, it would be in those transcripts. Those transcripts have not been released. Now, Susan Rice had a reaction to the release of this email this evening, and she would like them to be released. Here's a bit of the email statement that she sent out this evening. In the interest of transparency, Ambassador Rice, it was sent on her behalf, I should say, again calls upon the Director of National Intelligence, who is the acting director, would be Rick Grinnell right now, to release the unredacted transcripts of all Kislyak-Flynn calls. Now, it's my understanding, Senator Johnson, the American people deserve the full transcript so they can judge for themselves Michael Flynn's conduct. So she's saying, look, if everybody saw what they talked about, you would understand our concern. What do you say?
I'm for full transparency. What we do know, Martha, is on January 4th, they had been undertaking investigation of Michael Flynn, apparently his dealings in Turkey and other things. But by January 4th, they had concluded there was no there, and so they're going to close the case until Peter Strzok said, well, talk to somebody, or the word has come down from the 7th floor, which is James Comey's office. Let's keep this thing open. We're lucky that we didn't close this thing, because let's start talking about the Logan Act, some obscure law that has never been, successfully prosecuted. So again, there are so many odd things here, but I'm for full transparency. We way overclassify material, and what I found out in this job is we generally oftentimes we classify to prevent embarrassment for individuals or prevent embarrassment to an agency. That's not why we should be classifying. We should only classify to protect national security.
You make a great point, because it's worth noting that this original Susan Rice email is stamped top secret. And, when everybody looks at the contents of that email tonight, you might wonder why that would be classified as top secret. The other thing that I keep going back to is if in that moment they have genuine concerns based on what has happened on these phone calls with Kislyak, they don't. The biggest responsibility is to run the country responsibly and to make that transition of power. So if that were the case, that they were genuinely concerned that there was some compromise or something going on that was nefarious on those phone calls, why would they have not told the incoming president of the United States?
Because there's a corrupt transition process. No, that's exactly what they should have done. The FBI defensively briefed Senator Feinstein when they found out that she had a potential Chinese agent in her office. They went to her quietly and said, you have a potential problem, you should take care of it. That's what the FBI should have been doing throughout the campaign and transition if they had any concerns, and President Trump could have addressed those concerns at that point in time. This didn't have to happen. Again, it begs the question, what were they up to?
So, Senator Johnson, your colleague Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, wants to know what you're up to. I mean, it's very interesting in this time frame. We've seen a lot of stuff pouring out of the new acting director of national intelligence. These documents have been unearthed. That's what has forced a lot of this to the forefront. Also, the decision by the judge. But here's Senator Schumer, talking about what you're up to. Watch.
In the midst of a public health crisis, Senate Republicans are diving headfirst into the muck to smear the family of the president's political opponent. It's such a gross misuse of the power of the majority.
So there he's referring to the Burisma investigation, which is just one of many investigations that you are pushing forward right now.
Well, first of all, most of my time is spent on COVID and oversight on that and talking to FEMA and other people dealing with this crisis. But what I'm primarily doing is what I've been doing since March of 2015 when we started conducting oversight in the Clinton email scandal, which has just morphed because of the same cast of characters exonerating Hillary Clinton and then trying to basically sabotage the Trump administration. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the American people the truth. And as this Susan Rice email shows, we have way overclassified things. There's information the American people should have learned about 3 years ago. You know, where's Christopher Wray been in all this? He should have gone into the FBI. He should have cleaned house. He should have made all this available, but he hasn't done that. We need to restore the integrity and credibility to these agencies, and this is not the way to do it by keeping this stuff covered up for over 3 years. It's time to expose this. It's time for transparency.
Well, it sounds like both sides, Susan Rice and Michael Flynn and his attorneys, all want those transcripts to be released of the Flynn-Kislyak phone calls. And I know our viewers, everybody in America, would like to see them as well. So we hope that that is what comes out next. Senator, thank you. Good to have you here tonight.